Hi, welcome to the video. My name's Icronic, and today we're taking a look at my top 10 Warlock Exotics in Destiny 2. And of course, as always, I have made a spreadsheet for this video which does rank and score every single one of the Warlock Exotics in the game in both PvE and PvP. And that can still be found on my Discord server, link in the description down below, on the channel #SpreadsheetDocs. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. On screen right now is my spreadsheet of its dark theme, color-coded pictures, rankings, recommendations for all the different things in the game. First up, we have the honorable mention known as Sunbracers, which is actually very close to being the top 10, probably like number 11 or 12. And frankly, it's also one of the more popular options. It allows you to get infinite solar grenades after getting a single ranged melee kill. However, I have found that depending on a melee, regardless of its ranged ability, and the fact you have to float through the air, which is not very controllable, you'll easily get shot, has not been the greatest experience in the higher level. And in my opinion, Starfire just beats it in almost every way. Following that at number 10, it's a simple one, Aeon Salt. Pretty much the same as all of the other Aeon Exotics. The ability to spawn in heavy ammo and special ammo from champions and elite enemies is a very powerful tool, on top of all the other bonuses that it can have. However, still, we don't find that there's a lot of benefit for having multiple on your team, or at least the benefits you get are just not as worth it. And with that said, obviously being able to spawn in heavy ammo for your teammates in a Grandmaster Nightfall is incredibly useful and a great default exotic. After that, at number 9, we have the Rain of Fire, an exotic that we saw last season, which had some popularity. However, it is, in my opinion, a bit underrated. Firstly, you reload all your weapons from an air dodge, which is something that's nice to have, similar to that of Dragon Shadow. Secondly, that air dodge improves the airborne effectiveness of fusion rifles and linear fusion rifles, which does include Vex Mythic class, and just across the board increases the airborne effectiveness of those weapons as well. Now, you should also keep in mind that Arbalest and Lorenz Driver are also linear fusion rifles. Even though they did get nerfed, this is a good way to even bring it up a little bit more. And of course, any final blow with these fusion rifle weapons will give you Radiant, which is an excellent thing to have on Solar. Following that, at number 8, we have the Eye of Another World, a very popular and very powerful PvP option. If you don't know, highlighting priority targets is going to be enemies that you break the shield of or do enough damage to, and your improved regeneration of your abilities for your grenade, melee, and rift is actually increased stats, which is like, I think, plus 30 to all of those stats. Either plus 20 or plus 30, which is really powerful. So if you love your abilities, you love your ability-based builds, this really does help out. And as a little fun fact, I do believe invis enemies that you do have that highlight on, you can actually still see while invisible. And as you probably are well aware of, Void Hunters are incredibly common in the Crucible. What was it, like 28% of all players in Trials were Void Hunters? That's about as many Warlocks. Following that, at number 7, we have the Stag. Pretty much the same as before, even though it was used a lot in the Arc base with the Arc buddies in your Rift, we found that it didn't really change much. And it just, in general, Arc 3.0 didn't really make a big difference to any of the subclasses, because some parts got better, some parts got worse, and in general, Arc 3.0 is not nearly as strong as Solar or Void. However, this exotic is still incredibly strong, allowing you to get more damage resistance in your Rift, allowing you to have those rifts more easily, and of course, having it on your corpse to help with revives is so very useful. Following that, at number 6, we have these Transversive Steps, which is obviously the speed boots for the Warlock, which is obviously very useful for PvP and making sure that you don't get shot, and in PvE to finish that strike faster, on top of the auto-loading whenever you're sprinting with a weapon. And as I've said many times before, if you are faster, you are harder to hit, and if you are faster, you can run away from enemies, and if you are faster, you can chase down enemies. Do not poo-poo on speed. And I'm not talking about meth, we're talking about Transversive Steps. Stay on top of it. Following that, at number 5, we have the Osmomancy. It's an exotic pair of gloves that came out a couple seasons ago that, in my opinion, very underrated. The ability to get your cold snaps back very easily. It also triggers on every time you freeze an enemy. It also triggers on contact hitting an enemy. And of course, you can have double of those grenades, allowing you to spawn in one of those freezy turrets and then also use cold snap grenades. You have overflow charging. And apparently, they're going to be changing the way that Osmomancy works to make it slightly retarget slightly faster, which would mean that it would only get a little bit better. And to be clear, this is great in both PvP and PvE. I would use this in Grandmasters and I would use this in Trials. And furthermore, that melee that just freezes an enemy in front of you is so annoying to fight against. Following that, at number 4, probably my most used Warlock Exotic right now is the Starfire Protocol. And as I mentioned before, is one of my favorite exotics in the game. It allows your fusion grenades to have an additional charge and recharge from empowered weapon damage. So if you're in a well or an empowering rift and you get weapon damage, you get about a fourth of your fusion grenade. As you well know, that specific aspect that allows your fusion grenades to explode twice and do even more damage on that second explosion is incredibly powerful. And with that, it's also one of the fastest charging grenades in the game and one of the highest amount amount of scorch effects you can apply to a target. And furthermore, fusion grenade kills give you your full rift back, any kill with your fusion grenade. So literally all you do is toss your fusion grenades, you put down an empowering rift, you do damage with a primary weapon or some kind of special weapon, and you're having nearly infinite fusion grenades. My personal favorite thing to do is going to be either with Wither Horde or Anarchy in an empowering rift or a well, which allows continuous weapon tick damage, allowing you to almost continuously throw fusion grenades. Combine that with something with Demolitionists like Salvager Salvo, and it allows you to autoload with the tossing of a grenade, or alternatively swapping to a linear in between when you don't have your grenades completely. It's such incredible boss damage, major damage, add fodder killing. It's available almost the entire time because it's based on weapon hits and empowering rifts. The only downside to using this is that you can't use another exotic like Lunafaction, and you don't have your healing rift. Following that at number 3, the best PvP options for the Warlock is going to be the Ophidian aspect for a lot of obvious reasons. Being able to have your weapons ready faster and reload quickly, better handling in general, and farther melee range is something that is excellent in the Crucible. And let me tell you, it's so much faster than just maxed out stats. And it may not be as fast as something like Dragon Shadow, which in my opinion makes the Hunters even slightly better. Ophidians is going to be the go-to across pretty much every subclass. If only, you know, the melees wouldn't whiff half the time, it would be great. Following that at number 2, we have the Contraverse Hull, which is obviously going to be your Void Grenade option. Firstly, you resist damage while charging your Void Grenades, which is not big, but can help. And most importantly, whenever you get damage with those charge grenades, they actually give you your grenade energy back. My personal preference, if you're using Vortex Grenade, charge that up. The first hit and the last hit of Vortex will both trigger the effect on this exotic. And to just follow that up with a tiny bit more, with a little bit of Devour perhaps, and you get your full grenade from a single grenade throw. Which if you're using weaken effects on your grenade within the Void 3.0 stuff, and all the other effects to do stuff, you're going to be getting your grenade pretty much all the time. Which is obviously incredible neutral game, also very much helps with boss damage and weakening targets. As long as you don't mess up your grenade and you get a single hit with it, this will make your grenades just so much better. And finally, at number 1, we have the Verity's Brow. In my opinion, one of the most underrated exotics in the game, although feels a bit complicated, does such dividends for your whole kit. Specifically, your grenades, which obviously is one of the best parts of Warlock kits. Just to explain it a little bit, weapon final blows with a weapon type that matches your subclass, so Void for Void, will give you death throws. Each stack of death throws gives you around 20% more damage with a grenade, up to 5 stacks. And when you have death throws and you throw a grenade, nearby allies get greatly increased grenade regeneration for a short period of time. And greatly is about double, triple speed, I think. But even if you're playing solo, this allows you to get your grenades pretty quick. Combine that with certain charge with light mods, grenade recharge mods, and you're probably going to be having a grenade pretty often. And each one of these grenades are going to be doing a lot more damage. And keeping in mind, this is for any subclass in the game, as long as you can have a weapon type that matches it. And to be clear, these are just my top 10. Obviously, there are a lot of very fun and very good exotics in the game that just didn't make the top 10 because I had to pick 10. And I would also like to highlight that Warlocks have a lot of very average exotics. They have the best average score of any of the subclasses, even though they have some of the fewest top options. And unfortunately, in general, I would agree that Warlocks are probably the weakest class as far as the higher level play and PvP. But that's not to say they're the least fun, especially with those grenade builds I mentioned before, like Starfire Protocol. They can be a lot of fun. And hopefully Bungie recognizes those shortcomings so they can actually have more usability, other than being the well boy. And of course, a big thank you to my patrons on Patreon. Specifically, a big thank you to Mom and Dad, Kid Bishal, Robert Strayer, Monday, Steve Balkins, Unipanther, Casey Reagan, Marcus Clever, for their support on Patreon. And that's it. Hope you guys did enjoy. My name's Zach Ryan, and I'll see you guys on the next one.